The night Amelia Novak's father died in the back room of their failing trading post, she made a promise to herself that she would never depend on anyone again. But destiny had other plans when a dusty cowboy with storm-gray eyes walked through her door on a scorching July afternoon in 1878. Alamosa, Colorado sat at the edge of the San Luis Valley like a collection of sun-bleached bones scattered across the desert floor. The Rio Grande flowed nearby, giving the town just enough life to survive but not enough to truly thrive. Amelia had lived here for 3 years now, ever since her father decided the trading post would be their last venture after a string of failed businesses from Santa Fe to Denver. She was 21 years old and felt ancient, her hands rough from hauling crates and her heart hardened from burying the only family she had left just 2 months prior. The trading post stood on the eastern edge of town, a weathered structure that leaned slightly to the left as if perpetually drunk. Amelia had been trying to keep it running alone, but the debts her father left behind were mounting faster than the dust storms that rolled through the valley. She was arranging dried goods on a shelf when she heard the door creak open and turned to see a man standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the brutal afternoon sun. "We are open," she said curtly, wiping her hands on her worn apron. "But I only take cash or direct trade. No credit." The man stepped inside, and as her eyes adjusted, she could see him more clearly. He was tall and lean, the kind of build that came from hard work rather than natural genetics. His hat was pushed back on his head, revealing dark hair that needed cutting and a face that was handsome in a rough, unpolished way. He looked to be in his mid-20s, with several days of stubble on his jaw and dust coating his clothes like a second skin. "Just looking for supplies," he said, his voice low and measured. "Need building materials, lumber, nails, tools if you have them." Amelia raised an eyebrow. "Building materials? There is not much call for that around here. Most folks use adobe." "I am aware," he replied, moving closer to the counter. "But I prefer wood, reminds me of home." "Where is home, Wyoming territory, was anyway?" He removed his hat, revealing more of his face. His eyes were indeed gray, the color of storm clouds gathering over the mountains. "Name is Zachary Nelson. Folks call me Zach." "Amelia Novak," she responded automatically, then immediately regretted offering her name so readily. She did not need to be friendly with customers, just take their money. "The lumber I have is expensive. Comes all the way from the mountains and the hauling cost is steep." Zach reached into his pocket and pulled out a leather pouch that clinked with the promising sound of coins. "I can pay. Been saving for a while now. Got a job working at the Fletcher Ranch just north of here. Good pay, and I have been living out of a tent for the past month while I scouted land." Despite herself, Amelia felt a flicker of curiosity. "You are building a house here in Alamosa, about 2 miles west of town. Found a nice spot near the river, got good water access and decent grazing land. Bought it fair and square from the land office last week." He set the pouch on the counter. "Figure it is time to put down roots. Been drifting since I was 18 and I am tired of it." Amelia felt something twist in her chest at his words. Putting down roots, staying in one place. The very idea seemed foreign to her, even though she had been trapped in this trading post for years. Her father had always been moving, chasing the next opportunity, and even in death, he had left her in a limbo where she could not afford to leave but could not quite settle either. "Nobody stays in Alamosa," she said quietly, almost to herself. "They pass through, buy supplies, and move on. Even the folks who live here, half of them are planning their exit." Zach studied her with those gray eyes, and she felt exposed under his gaze, as if he could see past her carefully constructed walls. Maybe that is about to change. Over the next hour, they went through her inventory. Amelia showed him what lumber she had, mostly pine boards that had been sitting in the storage shed for months. Nobody wanted them at her prices, but Zach did not haggle. He also bought nails, a new hammer, a saw that had belonged to her father, and several other tools. By the time they finished, he had spent more money than she had seen in weeks. "I will need to make multiple trips to haul all this," Zach said, looking at the pile of supplies they had assembled near the door. "My horse can carry some, but the lumber will need a wagon." "I have a wagon," Amelia heard herself say. "I could deliver it, for an additional fee." Zach smiled for the first time, and it transformed his face from merely handsome to something that made Amelia's breath catch. "That would be appreciated. When can you make the delivery?" "Tomorrow morning. Early, before the heat sets in." "I will be there." He handed her more coins for the delivery fee, then hefted some of the smaller items. "I will take these now and meet you tomorrow. Head west on the main road, then follow the river north when you see the old cottonwood that split in lightning. You cannot miss it." After he left, Amelia stood in the empty trading post, looking at the stack of coins on the counter. It was the most business she had done in a single transaction since her father died. She should have been pleased, but instead, she felt unsettled. Zach Nelson's words echoed in her mind. Maybe that is about to change. That night, she lay in her small room above the trading post, listening to the wind rattle the loose boards on the roof. She thought about her father, about how he always promised that the next place would be better, that they would finally settle down and build a real life. He died still chasing that dream, leaving her with nothing but debts and a ramshackle building full of goods nobody wanted. "Nobody stays," she whispered to the darkness, and the words felt like a truth carved into her bones. The next morning, Amelia loaded the wagon before dawn, working in the cool darkness to avoid the heat that would come later. The lumber was heavy, and by the time she finished, her arms ached and sweat dampened her shirt despite the early hour. She hitched up the 2 horses, old and plodding but reliable, and set out west as the sun began to paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The road out of Alamosa was rutted and rough, but the wagon handled it well enough. Amelia had made deliveries before, though not often and not this far out of town. As she drove, she found herself thinking about Zach Nelson, wondering what would drive a man to build a house in such an isolated spot. The land around here was beautiful in its own harsh way, but it was unforgiving. Water was scarce except near the river, and the winters could be brutal. She found the split cottonwood easily enough and turned north, following a faint trail through the scrub grass and sage. The Rio Grande wound through the landscape like a silver ribbon, and as she crested a small rise, she saw the spot Zach had chosen. It was perfect. The land sloped gently down to the river, protected from the worst winds by a natural rise of land to the north. A stand of cottonwoods provided shade, and she could see where Zach had already started clearing a space for his house. He was there now, stripped to the waist in the morning heat, digging post holes with a fury that spoke of determination. He looked up as the wagon approached, and Amelia felt that strange flutter in her chest again. In the golden morning light, with sweat gleaming on his muscled shoulders and his hair falling across his forehead, he looked like something out of a story, a frontier hero from one of those dime novels that occasionally made their way to her trading post. "You are early," he called out, setting down his shovel and reaching for his shirt. "Wanted to beat the heat," Amelia replied, pulling the wagon to a stop. "Where do you want the lumber?" Zach pulled on his shirt, though he left it unbuttoned and walked over to help her down from the wagon seat. His hand was warm and calloused against hers, and Amelia pulled away quickly, unsettled by the contact. "Over here is fine," he said, gesturing to a cleared area near where he had been working. "I will start framing tomorrow. Want to get the posts set today, while the ground is still soft from that rain we had 2 days ago." They worked together to unload the wagon, falling into an easy rhythm despite being strangers. Zach was strong and efficient, and Amelia found herself matching his pace, not wanting to appear weak or incapable. By the time they finished, the sun was climbing higher and the heat was becoming oppressive. "I have water," Zach offered, pointing to a barrel in the shade of the cottonwoods. "And some food if you are hungry. Not much, but you are welcome to it." Amelia knew she should refuse, should climb back on the wagon and return to town. But her throat was dry, and something about this place, about this man, made her want to linger. "Water would be good," she admitted. They sat in the shade of the trees, drinking cool water from tin cups. The river burbled nearby, and a slight breeze rustled the leaves overhead. It was peaceful in a way that Alamosa never was, without the constant noise of people passing through, the rattle of wagons, the shouts from the saloon. "Why here?" Amelia asked finally. "Why Alamosa? There are better places to settle, places with more opportunity." Zach was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the river. "I grew up on a ranch in Wyoming. My parents had a good spread, worked hard, built something real. But when I was 18, my mother got sick. Fever took her in less than a week. My father, he could not handle it, started drinking, let the ranch fall apart. I tried to hold it together, but he gambled away what we had left, lost it all to a speculator from back east." "I am sorry," Amelia said softly. "I left after that. Figured I would drift for a while, see the country, find myself, or whatever young men tell themselves when they are running away. I worked cattle drives, hired my gun out a few times, though I am not proud of that, did whatever paid. But everywhere I went, I saw the same thing. People leaving, chasing something better, never settling down. And I realized I did not want that. I wanted what my parents had before everything fell apart. A home. A place that was mine." He turned to look at her, and his eyes were intense. "I chose Alamosa because it is quiet, because the land spoke to me, and because maybe, just maybe, I can build something that lasts here." Amelia felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them away angrily. "My father was always chasing something better," she said, surprising herself with the admission. "Every new town, every new business, he swore it would be the one. But it never was. He died in that trading post, and I am still there trying to keep it alive when maybe I should just let it die." "Why do you stay?" "Because I have nowhere else to go. Because the debts he left would follow me anywhere. Because leaving feels like admitting defeat." She laughed bitterly. "Nobody stays in Alamosa, but I am trapped here." Zach reached out and took her hand, the gesture so unexpected that she did not pull away. "Maybe staying is not a trap. Maybe it is a choice." They sat like that for a long moment, hands linked, the river singing its endless song beside them. Then Amelia pulled away, standing up abruptly. "I should go. I have a business to run." "Will you come back?" Zach asked, rising to his feet. "I could use more supplies as I build, and I would welcome the company." Amelia wanted to say no, to protect herself from whatever this was growing between them, but she found herself nodding instead. "I will bring your next order in a few days." She climbed onto the wagon seat and gathered the reins, not looking back as she drove away. But she could feel Zach watching her go, and the weight of his gaze stayed with her all the way back to town. Over the next 3 weeks, Amelia made 4 more trips to Zach's land. Each time, she found more progress on the house. The posts went up, then the frame, then the roof. Zach worked with a single-minded determination that was mesmerizing to watch, and each time they would take a break together, sitting in the shade and talking about everything and nothing. She learned that he was 26. that he loved his morning coffee strong enough to float a horseshoe, that he had a wicked sense of humor hidden beneath his serious exterior. He learned that she was an only child, that she could read and write better than most men, that she had dreams of opening a real store someday, not just a trading post but a place where people wanted to come. The walls of Amelia's heart, built so carefully after her father's death, began to crack. But she was afraid. Every night, lying in her room above the trading post, she would remind herself that Zach Nelson was just another man passing through, that his house would be finished and he would leave, that nobody stayed in Alamosa. The words had become a mantra, a protection against hope. One evening, as she was closing up the trading post, Zach rode into town. He was cleaner than usual, his hair trimmed and his jaw freshly shaved. He tied his horse outside and stepped into the store just as Amelia was tallying the day's meager receipts. "I did not expect to see you tonight," she said, trying to keep her voice neutral even as her heart hammered in her chest. "The house is nearly finished," Zach said. "Just needs a few finishing touches. I wanted to invite you to see it properly. Tomorrow, if you can spare the time." "I have seen it," Amelia pointed out. "I have been delivering your supplies for weeks. You have seen it as a customer. I want you to see it as a guest." He stepped closer to the counter, and in the lamplight his eyes were soft. "Please, Amelia, it is important to me that you see what I built." She should have said no. Every instinct told her to protect herself, to keep her distance. But the hope in his eyes undid her. "All right, tomorrow afternoon." The next day seemed to drag endlessly. Amelia found herself changing her dress twice, settling finally on her best blue calico that brought out the color of her eyes. She braided her dark hair carefully and even pinched her cheeks for color, then felt foolish for the effort. This was not a social call. Zach was just a customer, and she was just delivering one final load of supplies. But when she arrived at his land in the early afternoon, her breath caught at the sight before her. The house was beautiful. It was not large, maybe 3 rooms, but it was solid and well built, with a covered porch that faced the river and windows that would let in the morning light. Zach had even built a small barn and a corral for horses. It looked like a home, like a place where a person could build a life. Zach was waiting on the porch, and he smiled when he saw her. "Come inside. I want to show you everything." The interior was simple but thoughtfully designed. The main room had a stone fireplace that Zach had built himself, and there was a kitchen area with a real cookstove he had hauled from town. 2 smaller rooms branched off the main space, one clearly meant to be a bedroom and the other currently empty. "That will be a study," Zach explained, seeing her look. "Or maybe a room for children someday, whatever life brings." Amelia ran her hand along the smooth wooden walls, feeling the care that had gone into every joint and board. "It is wonderful, Zach. You should be proud." "I am," he said quietly, "but it feels empty. A house is not a home without someone to share it with." Amelia's hand stilled on the wall. She could feel him behind her, close but not touching, and the air between them felt charged with possibility. "Amelia," he said softly, "these past few weeks, getting to know you, they have been the best of my life. I know you have been hurt. I know you are afraid to trust. But I am not your father. I am not going to chase dreams and leave you behind. I built this house and I am staying. The question is, will you stay with me?" She turned to face him, and the vulnerability in his eyes nearly broke her. "Zach, I cannot just abandon the trading post. My father's debts, we will figure it out together. Sell the trading post, pay what you can of the debts. If there is more owed, I have savings. We will make it right." He took her hands in his, and his grip was warm and steady. "I am not asking you to depend on me. I am asking you to build something with me, a partnership, a life." "Nobody stays," she whispered, and the words that had once been armor now felt like a lie. "I am staying," Zach said firmly. "I built this house. I am building a future, and I want to build it with you. I love you, Amelia. I think I have loved you since the day you told me off about lumber prices." A laugh bubbled up in Amelia's throat, surprising her, and then the tears came, hot and cleansing, washing away years of hurt and fear. "I am terrified," she admitted. "So am I," Zach said, pulling her close. "But I think that means it is real." Amelia looked up at him, at this man who had walked into her trading post and somehow seen past all her defenses to the lonely, hopeful woman underneath. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have been fighting it since the beginning." Zach kissed her then, gentle and sweet, and Amelia felt something inside her unfurl like a flower opening to the sun. When they finally pulled apart, she was smiling through her tears. "I will stay," she said. "I will build this life with you, but I have conditions." Zach laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Name them." "We sell the trading post and use the money to pay my father's debts. I will not start our marriage under that shadow, and we do not rush this. I want a proper courtship. I want to do this right." "Agreed on the debts," Zach said. "But I will pay them. Consider it my wedding gift to you, a fresh start. As for the courtship, how long are you thinking?" "6 months," Amelia said firmly. "I want to be sure. I want us to be sure." 3 months, Zach countered. "I am already sure, but I will give you time to catch up." "But we announce our engagement now. I want everyone to know you are mine and I am yours." Amelia considered, then nodded. 3 months. "But you better court me properly, Zachary Nelson. I want flowers and pretty words and all the things a woman dreams of." "You will have them," Zach promised. "You will have everything." The news of their engagement spread through Alamosa like wildfire. Most people were surprised, having pegged Amelia as a confirmed spinster who would die in her father's trading post. But there were a few, like Mrs. Fletcher, who ran the general store, who claimed they had seen it coming from the start. Zach courted Amelia with a single-minded devotion that was both flattering and slightly overwhelming. He came to town every evening after his work at the Fletcher ranch, bringing her wildflowers from the river valley and helping her close up the trading post. They would walk through the streets of Alamosa as the sun set, talking about their plans for the future. Selling the trading post proved easier than Amelia expected. A merchant from Santa Fe had been looking for a foothold in the San Luis Valley, and he made a fair offer. It was not enough to cover all her father's debts, but Zach made up the difference without complaint, pulling from his carefully saved wages. By the end of August, Amelia was free of the burden that had weighed her down for months. She also started making changes to Zach's house, their house now. She made curtains for the windows from fabric she bought from Mrs. Fletcher, bright yellow calico that caught the morning sun. She planted a small garden near the kitchen door, vegetables that would need to be harvested before the first frost, but would provide food for the winter. And she started filling the empty spaces with small touches, a vase for flowers on the table, a quilt for the bed that she sewed by lamplight. Zach watched these transformations with barely concealed delight. He had built the structure, but Amelia was making it a home, and the difference was profound. Their wedding was set for late September, just before the weather turned. It would be a simple affair at the small church in Alamosa, with Reverend Thomas officiating and whatever townsfolk wanted to attend. Amelia had no family left, but Mrs. Fletcher had taken her under wing, helping her sew a proper wedding dress from white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. The night before the wedding, Amelia stood in her empty room above what had been the trading post, looking at the packed trunks that held her few possessions. Tomorrow, she would marry Zach Nelson and move permanently to the house by the river. Tomorrow, her new life would truly begin. She was not afraid anymore. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, unseasonably warm for late September. Amelia dressed carefully, her hands steady as she buttoned the white dress. Mrs. Fletcher had insisted on weaving wildflowers into her dark hair, and when Amelia looked at herself in the small mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked happy. She looked hopeful. She looked like a bride. The church was fuller than she expected. It seemed like half of Alamosa had turned out, curious to see the reclusive trading post owner marry the cowboy who had built a house by the river. Zach was waiting at the altar, wearing a new suit that made him look both handsome and slightly uncomfortable. But when he saw Amelia walking down the aisle, his face transformed with such pure joy that she felt tears prick her eyes. Reverend Thomas kept the ceremony short and sweet. They exchanged vows, simple promises to love and honor each other through whatever life brought. When Zach slipped the gold band onto Amelia's finger, his hand was trembling slightly, and she gripped it firmly, steadying him as he had steadied her so many times before. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Thomas declared. "Zachary, you may kiss your bride." Zach did, thoroughly and enthusiastically, to the cheers and laughter of the assembled crowd. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Amelia felt like her heart might burst from happiness. They held a small reception at the Fletcher Ranch, where Mrs. Fletcher and several other women had prepared a feast. There was roasted beef and fresh bread, apple pie and sweet cider, more food than Amelia had seen in months. People congratulated them, offered advice, and generally made merry. Even some of the ranch hands who worked with Zach came to celebrate, ribbing him good-naturedly about being a married man now. As the sun began to set, Zach and Amelia slipped away from the celebration, riding together to their house by the river. Zach had hitched his horse to a small buggy for the occasion, and Amelia sat close beside him, her head resting on his shoulder as they traveled through the gathering dusk. The house looked beautiful in the fading light, welcoming and warm with lamplight glowing through the windows. Zach had lit them before the wedding, wanting Amelia to come home to a lit house. It was a small gesture, but it touched her deeply. Zach helped her down from the buggy, then surprised her by sweeping her up into his arms. "Threshold," he explained with a grin, carrying her up the porch steps and through the front door. He set her down gently in the main room, and they stood together, hands clasped, looking at the home they had built together. It was not much by some standards, this simple wooden house on the edge of the frontier. But it was theirs, earned through hard work and hope and the courage to believe in a future together. "I love you, Mrs. Nelson," Zach said softly. "I love you too, Mr. Nelson," Amelia replied and kissed him. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, a discovery of each other in the privacy of their bedroom. Amelia had been nervous, but Zach was patient and gentle, and the love between them made everything feel natural and right. Afterwards, they lay tangled together in the darkness, listening to the river outside their window. "I am glad you stayed," Zach whispered against her hair. "So am I," Amelia replied, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The first year of their marriage was hard in the way that all new beginnings are hard. They were learning each other's rhythms, figuring out how to share space and decisions and a life. There were disagreements about small things, like how to arrange the kitchen or whether to plant corn or wheat in the spring. But there was also laughter and passion, and a growing sense of partnership that ran deeper than Amelia had thought possible. Zach continued working at the Fletcher Ranch, saving money for the day when they could afford to buy cattle of their own and run their own operation. Amelia started a small business from the house, taking in sewing and selling baked goods in town. It was not much, but it helped, and she liked feeling useful, like she was contributing to their future. She also started making friends in Alamosa, real friends, not just business acquaintances. Mrs. Fletcher became like a mother to her, teaching her recipes and offering advice on everything from marriage to keeping chickens. She became close with several other ranch wives, women who understood the challenges of frontier life and the importance of supporting each other. By the time their first anniversary rolled around, Amelia realized she was happier than she had ever been. The darkness that had haunted her after her father's death had lifted, replaced by a sense of belonging and purpose. She had a home, a partner, a life that was truly hers. And she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had not wanted to say anything until she was sure. But as September came again, bringing with it cooler weather and the memory of their wedding day, she could no longer hide the truth from herself or from Zach. She told him one evening after dinner as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset. "I have news," she said, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby." Zach went very still, his gray eyes wide with shock. Then a slow smile spread across his face, transforming it with joy. "A baby, are you sure?" "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor. But yes, I am sure. The baby should come in the spring, April or May if my calculations are right." Zach pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "We are going to be parents," he said, wonder in his voice. "I am going to be a father." "Are you happy?" Amelia asked, though she could feel the answer in his embrace. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Zach said, pulling back to look at her. "You have given me everything, Amelia. A home, a purpose, and now a child. I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "I love you too," Amelia replied and kissed him. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Amelia struggled with morning sickness in the early months. Zach was attentive to the point of being comically overprotective, trying to prevent her from doing any heavy work and fussing over her constantly. Amelia found it both touching and mildly annoying, but she knew it came from a place of love. As her belly grew, they prepared for the baby's arrival. Zach built a beautiful cradle from oak wood, sanding it until it was smooth as silk. Amelia sewed tiny clothes and blankets, amazed at how small they were, how fragile. Mrs. Fletcher threw her a party in February, inviting all the ranch wives, and Amelia received practical gifts like cloth diapers and baby gowns and a lovely knitted shawl for wrapping the infant. Winter that year was mild, but as March turned to April, Amelia grew increasingly uncomfortable. Her back ached, her feet swelled, and she was tired all the time. Zach did his best to help, taking over most of the household chores and cooking meals when Amelia was too exhausted to move. "I feel like a beached whale," she complained one evening, trying to find a comfortable position in their bed. "You are beautiful," Zach said loyally, though his eyes were laughing. "The most beautiful beached whale I have ever seen." Amelia threw a pillow at him, which he dodged easily. "You are lucky I love you." "I am the luckiest man alive," Zach agreed and meant it. The baby came on a warm April afternoon, 3 weeks earlier than expected. Amelia had been hanging laundry when the first pain struck, doubling her over with its intensity. Zach was at the ranch, but their nearest neighbor, a widow named Mrs. Patterson, was visiting and immediately took charge. "Get inside," she ordered, helping Amelia into the house. "I will send my son for the midwife and Zach. Everything will be fine." But as the hours passed and the pains grew stronger, Amelia was not so sure. Childbirth was dangerous. She knew that. Women died in labor all the time on the frontier, and she found herself gripping Mrs. Patterson's hand with a fear that was primal and overwhelming. "I am scared," she gasped between contractions. "Of course you are," Mrs. Patterson said calmly. "Every woman is, but you are strong, Amelia. You will get through this." Zach arrived before the midwife, his face pale with worry. He burst into the bedroom where Amelia labored, ignoring Mrs. Patterson's protests that this was no place for a man. "I am not leaving her," he said firmly, taking Amelia's other hand. "We are in this together." Amelia could have cried with relief at having him there. The pain was worse than anything she had imagined, wave after wave that threatened to drown her. But Zach stayed by her side, talking her through each contraction, wiping her face with a cool cloth, never once leaving even when she screamed and cursed him for doing this to her. The midwife, Mrs. Ortega, arrived as the sun was setting and took over with practiced efficiency. She checked Amelia's progress, gave her herbs to chew for the pain, and generally radiated a calm competence that helped Amelia feel slightly less terrified. "Not much longer now," Mrs. Ortega said. "The baby is in position. Next time you feel the urge to push, you do it." Amelia did, bearing down with every ounce of strength she had left. The pain was transcendent, beyond anything physical, and she thought she might die from it. But then she heard a cry, thin and reedy and absolutely perfect, and suddenly nothing else mattered. "A boy," Mrs. Ortega announced, laying the squirming, red-faced infant on Amelia's chest. "A healthy boy with good lungs." Amelia looked down at her son, at the tiny perfect face and the dark hair plastered to his skull, and fell instantly and completely in love. Beside her, Zach was crying, tears streaming down his face as he stared at the baby in wonder. "We have a son," he whispered. "Amelia, we have a son." "What should we name him?" Amelia asked, unable to look away from the baby's face. Zach thought for a moment. "Samuel, after my grandfather. He was a good man, and I would like our son to have his name." "Samuel Nelson," Amelia said, trying it out. "It is perfect." The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and constant feedings, of learning how to care for a newborn and marveling at every tiny change in Samuel's appearance. Zach was a devoted father, getting up with Amelia for night feedings and walking the floor with Samuel when he cried. He would sit for hours just watching the baby sleep, his face soft with love. "I cannot believe he is ours," Zach said one night, holding Samuel while Amelia tried to catch a few hours of rest. "That we made this perfect little person." "He has your nose," Amelia observed drowsily. "And your eyes," Zach replied. "Poor kid," Amelia laughed, the sound tired but happy. "Go to sleep, Zach. Samuel will be awake again in an hour demanding to be fed." "I do not care," Zach said. "I could watch him forever." As Samuel grew from a newborn into an infant, their life settled into a new rhythm. Zach had been promoted to foreman at the Fletcher Ranch, which came with better pay and the promise of a percentage of the profits. It was enough that they could start seriously planning for their own herd, for the ranch they had dreamed of building. But more than that, they were happy. Samuel was a good baby, curious and quick to smile, and watching him grow was a joy beyond anything Amelia had imagined. On warm summer evenings, they would sit on the porch together, Zach holding Samuel while Amelia rested her head on his shoulder, and talk about the future. "I want more children," Zach said one such evening. "Maybe a daughter next time, though another son would be fine too." "Let us get through Samuel's infancy first," Amelia said dryly. "Then we can talk about more children." But secretly, she agreed. She wanted a house full of children, wanted to fill their home with laughter and noise and life. She wanted to give her children the stability she had never had, the sense of home and belonging that she and Zach were building together. When Samuel was 6 months old, Mr. Fletcher made Zach an offer that would change their lives. He was getting older, he explained, and his children had no interest in ranching. He wanted to sell the operation to someone who would care for it properly, and he was willing to offer Zach extremely favorable terms. "I have watched you work for 2 years now," Mr. Fletcher said. "You are honest, hardworking, and you understand cattle. My ranch would be in good hands with you. We can arrange payments over time, and I will even stay on for a year to help with the transition." Zach came home that evening in a daze, hardly able to believe their good fortune. He explained the offer to Amelia, who listened with growing excitement. "This is everything we have worked for," she said. "We could own the Fletcher Ranch. Do you realize what that means?" "I realize I will be taking on significant debt," Zach said, though his eyes were shining. "But yes, I realize what it means. We would be landowners, ranchers. We could build something real, something to pass on to Samuel and whatever other children we have." "Then we do it," Amelia said firmly. "We take the risk, we build our future." They sealed the deal with Mr. Fletcher the next week, and suddenly Zach was a ranch owner. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. They would need to move to the main ranch house, which was larger and closer to the cattle operations. It meant leaving the house Zach had built, the place where they had started their life together. "We can come back to it," Zach promised as they packed their belongings. "Maybe fix it up someday and use it for ranch hands, or keep it for ourselves when we want to get away. But the house is not what makes us a family. We are." Amelia looked around the main room at all the memories they had made here. Their wedding night, Samuel's birth, countless evenings sitting by the fire. "You are right," she said. "Home is wherever we are together." They moved to the Fletcher Ranch in the fall of 1880, 2 years after they had first met. The ranch house was larger than they needed, a sprawling structure with 6 rooms and a real dining room. It felt strange at first, having so much space, but Amelia quickly set about making it their own. She hung her yellow curtains in the windows, arranged their furniture, and planted bulbs in the garden that would bloom in spring. Samuel was walking by then, toddling around on unsteady legs and getting into everything. The ranch hands adored him, and there was always someone willing to watch him for a few minutes while Amelia worked. She had started keeping the ranch books, discovering a talent for numbers and organization that proved invaluable as they learned the business. Mr. Fletcher stayed true to his word, spending a year teaching Zach everything he knew about running a successful cattle operation. By the time he finally retired and moved to Denver to live with his daughter, Zach was ready to take over completely. Those first few years as ranch owners were challenging. There were droughts and harsh winters, cattle that got sick or were lost to predators, and the constant struggle to stay ahead of their debts to Mr. Fletcher. But slowly, steadily, they built their operation. They hired good men, invested in quality breeding stock, and developed a reputation for honest dealing that brought them more business. And their family grew. Amelia gave birth to their second child in the spring of 1882, a daughter they named Rose for her pink cheeks and rosebud mouth. She was a quiet baby, content to watch the world with solemn dark eyes, so different from Samuel's boisterous energy. Zach doted on her, this tiny girl who wrapped him around her finger from the moment she was born. "I am outnumbered now," he joked, holding Rose while Samuel climbed all over him. 3 against 1. "You love it," Amelia said, and he did. 2 years later came another son, James, who had Zach's gray eyes and Amelia's stubborn chin. He was born during a blizzard in February, coming so fast that there was no time to fetch the midwife. Zach delivered him himself with Amelia's guidance, and afterwards they lay together in bed with their new son, marveling at what they had accomplished. 3 children, Zach said wonderingly. "We have 3 children. And a successful ranch," Amelia added, "and each other. We have built a good life, Zach." "The best life," he agreed, As the years passed, their ranch prospered. They paid off their debt to Mr. Fletcher ahead of schedule and started expanding their herd. They bought additional land, including the property where Zach had built their first house, which they renovated and used for their head ranch hand and his family. They became pillars of the Alamosa community, respected and successful. But more than their material success, it was their love that endured. After 10 years of marriage, 15, 20, Amelia and Zach were still deeply in love. They still held hands while watching the sunset, still stole kisses in the barn when the children were not looking, still talked late into the night about their dreams and hopes. Their children grew and thrived. Samuel became a skilled horseman, passionate about the ranch and eager to learn everything about the business. Rose was quieter but brilliant, devouring every book she could get her hands on and dreaming of becoming a teacher. James was the wild one, always getting into scrapes and adventures, keeping them laughing and worrying in equal measure. In 1892, when Amelia was 35 and Zach 37, they welcomed their fourth and final child, a daughter named Lucy. She came as a surprise, conceived when they thought their family was complete. But from the moment she arrived, she brought nothing but joy, a happy baby who smiled at everyone and filled their home with laughter. "Our family is complete," Amelia said one evening, watching Lucy sleep in her cradle while their older children played outside. "4 beautiful children, a successful ranch, and you. I have everything I ever wanted and things I never dared to dream of." Zach pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "Remember the day we met, when you told me nobody stays in Alamosa?" "I remember," Amelia said softly. "I am still here," Zach said. "I built a house and I never left your side. I never will." "I know," Amelia replied. "You proved me wrong about everything. You showed me that some people do stay, that roots can grow deep, that home is real." They stood together in the fading light, watching their children play in the yard they had built, on the land they had claimed, living the life they had fought for. It had not been easy. There had been hard times and struggles, losses and sorrows. But through it all, they had each other. Samuel left for college in Denver when he turned 19, planning to study business and modern ranching techniques. It was hard to see him go, but Amelia was proud of his ambition. He promised to return and help run the ranch, to build on what they had started. Rose got her wish and became a teacher, taking over the small schoolhouse in Alamosa. She lived at home, riding into town each morning and returning each evening with stories about her students. She was engaged to a young man from a neighboring ranch, a kind fellow named Thomas who looked at her like she hung the moon. James, at 15, was still trying to figure out what he wanted. He loved the ranch but had a restless spirit that reminded Amelia of her father. She worried about him sometimes, but Zach assured her that James would find his way. And Lucy, just 6 years old, was their joy, their unexpected blessing in middle age. She followed Amelia everywhere, learning to cook and sew and tend the garden, chattering constantly and asking a million questions. One evening in the fall of 1898, as Amelia and Zach celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary, they sat on the porch of their ranch house and looked out over their land. The original house that Zach had built, now renovated and occupied by their ranch manager's family, was visible in the distance, smoke curling from its chimney in the cool evening air. 20 years, Amelia marveled. It feels like both yesterday and a lifetime ago. Do you ever regret it? Zach asked. Marrying me, staying here, choosing this life. Amelia turned to look at him, at this man who had kept every promise he ever made. His hair was touched with gray now, and there were lines around his eyes from squinting in the sun. But he was still her Zach, still the cowboy who had walked into her trading post and changed her life forever. "Not for a single moment," she said firmly. "You gave me everything I did not know I needed. A home, a family, a partner. You taught me that staying is not a trap, it is a choice. And I choose you every day." Zach kissed her, slow and sweet, with all the tenderness of 20 years together. "I love you, Amelia. You are the best decision I ever made." "I love you too," she replied. "Thank you for staying. Always," Zach promised. "I built this house, and I will never leave your side." As the sun set over the San Luis Valley, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Amelia rested her head on her husband's shoulder and felt a peace so complete it was almost overwhelming. This was home. This was love. This was the life they had built together. One day, one choice, one moment at a time. Their children would grow and have families of their own. Samuel would indeed return from college and take over more of the ranch operations, eventually marrying a lovely woman named Catherine and giving them grandchildren. Rose would marry her Thomas and continue teaching, raising her children with books and learning. James would find his calling as a horse trainer, developing a reputation throughout Colorado for his skill with difficult animals. And Lucy would grow into a beautiful, spirited woman who would one day run the household with the same competence her mother had shown. But that was all in the future. Tonight, Amelia and Zach sat together on their porch, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky, content in the knowledge that they had found what so many people spend their lives searching for. A love that lasted, a home that held, a promise that was kept. Years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and joys. In 1905, Zach turned 52, and they threw a party at the ranch that drew friends and neighbors from across the valley. Amelia was 48, still beautiful, though her dark hair was now streaked with silver. They had 7 grandchildren by then, with more on the way, and the ranch was more prosperous than ever. But age was catching up with them. Zach's joints ached in the mornings, especially when the weather changed, and Amelia tired more easily than she used to. They turned over more of the daily operations to Samuel, who ran things with the same dedication his father had shown. "We should travel," Zach suggested one evening. "See some of the country while we still can. Maybe go back to Wyoming, see where I grew up." "I would like that," Amelia agreed. "Though nowhere will be as beautiful as home." They made the trip the following summer, taking the train north and then hiring a wagon for the final stretch. The ranch where Zach had grown up was still there, owned by someone else now but recognizable. They stood together at the fence line, looking at the land that had shaped him. "My parents would have liked you," Zach said quietly. "My mother especially. She always said I would know when I found the right woman." "Were you scared?" Amelia asked, "when you first realized you loved me?" "Terrified," Zach admitted. "I had built walls around my heart after losing my family, after watching my father destroy himself. But you were worth the risk of tearing those walls down." They returned to Alamosa after 2 weeks, both agreeing that it felt like coming home in a way Wyoming no longer did. Their roots were in Colorado now, sunk deep into the land they had claimed and worked and loved. In the spring of 1910, tragedy struck when Rose's husband Thomas was killed in a riding accident. The family rallied around her, and she moved back to the ranch with her 3 children while she grieved and rebuilt her life. Amelia held her daughter through the dark nights, understanding the fear of loss in a way she hoped she would never have to face. "How do you do it?" Rose asked through her tears. "How do you trust love when it can be taken away so quickly?" "You remember that the love itself was worth it," Amelia said gently. "Thomas gave you years of happiness and 3 beautiful children. The pain of losing him is the price we pay for having loved him, And it is worth it, Rose. It is always worth it." The words proved prophetic in a way Amelia had not intended. In the winter of 1915, Zach fell ill with pneumonia. He had been out checking on cattle during a storm, and the cold and wet had settled in his lungs. Dr. Morrison came from town and did what he could, but Zach was 62 now, and his body did not fight off illness as easily as it once had. For 2 weeks, Amelia nursed him, barely sleeping as she sat by his bedside. Their children came to visit, bringing the grandchildren to see him. Samuel, now 36 and running the ranch, sat with his father and assured him that everything would be fine, that the ranch would continue to prosper. "I know it will," Zach said, his voice weak but certain. "You are a better rancher than I ever was, son. The ranch is in good hands." Rose read to him from his favorite books, and James brought the horses to the window so he could see them. Lucy, now 23 and engaged to be married, held his hand and cried, not ready to let her father go. But it was Amelia he wanted most, Amelia who lay beside him in their bed and held him through the long nights. "I am sorry," he whispered one evening. "I promised I would never leave you." "You kept your promise," Amelia said fiercely, tears streaming down her face. "You gave me 40 years, Zach. 40 years of love and partnership and everything I ever wanted. You built a house and you never left my side. Not really. You will always be with me." "I love you," he said, the words coming with effort now. "Best decision I ever made that day I walked into your trading post." "I love you too," Amelia replied. "In this life and whatever comes next, I will always love you." Zach died 3 days later, peacefully in his sleep with Amelia beside him. The funeral was the largest Alamosa had ever seen, with people coming from across Colorado to pay their respects. He was laid to rest in the cemetery overlooking the valley, with a view of the ranch he had built and the life he had created. Amelia thought she might die from the grief. For weeks, she barely functioned, going through the motions while her heart felt like it had been torn from her chest. Her children worried about her, but it was Samuel who finally sat her down and spoke truth. "Papa kept his promise," he said gently. "He built this life with you. He gave us all a home, a legacy. The best way to honor him is to keep living, to keep loving, to keep being the woman he fell in love with." Slowly, painfully, Amelia found her way back. She threw herself into the ranch, working alongside Samuel to keep Zach's dream alive. She spent time with her grandchildren, telling them stories about their grandfather. And she discovered that grief and love were not opposites but 2 sides of the same coin, that she could miss Zach desperately and still find joy in living. She lived another 12 years after Zach's death, years filled with both sorrow and sweetness. She saw Lucy married and blessed with children. She watched James finally settle down with a spirited woman who matched his energy. She helped Rose find love again with a widower from Denver, a kind man who understood loss. The ranch continued to prosper under Samuel's management, and they added more land, more cattle, building on the foundation Zach had laid. The original house that Zach had built, the one where their life had truly begun, was preserved as a reminder of where they started. On a warm spring day in 1927, Amelia sat on the porch of that first house, brought there by her children because she had expressed a wish to see it one more time. She was 70 years old, her body frail but her mind still sharp. Around her were her children, their spouses, and a veritable tribe of grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren. "Tell us again how you met grandfather," one of the great-grandchildren begged, and Amelia smiled. "He walked into my trading post on a hot July day," she began, the story as familiar and beloved as a prayer. "He wanted lumber to build a house. I told him nobody stays in Alamosa, that people just pass through. But your grandfather, he looked at me with those gray eyes and said, maybe that is about to change. And it did. He built this house and he never left my side. Did you live happily ever after? The child asked. Amelia looked around at the faces surrounding her, at the legacy she and Zach had created. Yes, she said softly. We did. We built a life together, a family, a home, and when he died, I thought the story was over, but it was not. He lives on in all of you in this ranch, in the love we shared. That never dies. Love never dies. Amelia passed away peacefully in her sleep that night, in the house Zach had built, surrounded by the family they had created. She was laid to rest beside him in the cemetery overlooking the valley, and on her headstone, Samuel had engraved the words that had defined their love. She said, "Nobody stays." He built a house and never left her side. The ranch continued for generations, passed down through Samuel's line and beyond. The original house was preserved and eventually turned into a small museum, telling the story of Zach and Amelia Nelson, the cowboy and the trading post owner who had built a life together in the wilds of Colorado. Young couples would visit it, inspired by their story, hoping to find a love as enduring and true. And on quiet evenings, when the sun set over the San Luis Valley, people swore they could see two figures sitting on the porch of that old house, holding hands and watching the stars emerge. Some said it was just shadows and wishful thinking. But others, the ones who believed in love that transcends death, knew better. Zach had made a promise after all. He had built a house and he would never leave her side. Not in life, not in death, not ever. Some promises are too sacred to be broken, and some loves too powerful to be contained by something as simple as mortality. Their story lived on, a testament to the power of staying, of choosing love, of building a life one day at a time. In a world where people were always moving, always chasing the next thing, Zach and Amelia had chosen to put down roots. And those roots had grown into something magnificent, a legacy of love that would endure for generations to come. The trading post where they first met was long gone, torn down decades earlier to make way for progress. But the house Zach built still stood, weathered but strong, a monument to a love that had changed two lives and created an entire world. And in Alamosa, Colorado, when people talked about true love, about commitment, about the kind of partnership that could withstand anything, they told the story of the cowboy who built a house and the woman who learned to stay. It was a story with no ending, really, because the best stories never truly end. They ripple outward, touching lives, inspiring hearts, reminding people of what is possible when two souls find each other and choose to build something together. Zach and Amelia Nelson had done that, had taken their broken pieces and created something whole and beautiful and lasting. And somewhere, beyond the veil of death, they were still together, still holding hands, still watching the sunset over the land they had loved. Still proving that some people do stay, that some houses become homes, and that true love, real love, the kind of love that sees you and chooses you and builds a future with you, never really ends. It just goes on forever, like the river beside their house, flowing endlessly toward whatever comes next, together always, as they were always meant to be.